Okay, so welcome to tonight's Active Travel Cafe, 12th of September 2023. And tonight we'll start as usual with crowdsourced news with a couple of focused topics, in particular Better Streets Birmingham and the campaign for Safe Streets Now. We've got an exciting new report to discuss about road justice and the ever-going quest for better active travel facilities and enablement. And our main speaker tonight will be Jim Densham from Cycling UK in Scotland, who's going to be talking about how well the Scottish government is doing on active travel. So thank you very much, Jim, for coming along to do that. So let's start straight off with at crowdsourced news. And just to put this in a bit of context, I just wanted to give us a little bit of context from over the summer, make sure we're all up to speed. Can we see my screen there? So you've probably all been aware of the government talking about low traffic neighbourhoods and how it's not keen on what it calls anti-car things. Many of you may have seen what I've only seen in one source, which is that number 10 is turning what was a full review of low traffic neighbourhoods into more of a fact-finding mission, possibly because they've discovered that it's the local authorities who are responsible for this. There is, I think, a worthy and ongoing campaign by the Walking and Cycling Alliance of organisations, which includes British Cycling, Cycling UK, the Ramblers, Sustrans, Living Streets and others, to keep pressure up on this front, as we all should, through our MPs and councillors. And I'll pop this link in the chat, which is the Cycling UK version. If you haven't added your voice to that, and that of as many people in your organisation as you can, please do. The other thing is the emergence, not the emergence, but the continued importance of road danger as an issue, which you'll know has been a consistent theme in the Active Travel Cafe, not least because of our good friend Bob, who I hope is on tonight. And this has really got to I mean, particular levels in Birmingham, where it's been really shocking over the last several months. And we've got some people from Birmingham, I think would be ideal to have on first, talking about the issues they've seen and their Safe Streets Now campaign and planned day of action. And then perhaps tomorrow we can, just after that, we can talk about the all-party parliamentary group on cycling and walking road justice report. I think one of the reasons this is important is because it's high up on the wall of beliefs, and the wall of beliefs is a concept that's created by the government's communications consultants or communications service for how deeply embedded in people's minds a particular form of belief or concept is. And the document from which this comes, which is called the Wall of Beliefs, it's on the government website, and it's about the document is mostly about dealing with misinformation, but it's got broader applicability. And basically the higher up this this wall or table you get, the better your messages will embed themselves with people. And right at the top here are sacred values, foundational beliefs, like believing in a god or a country or family values, and down the bottom are kind of fleeting fashions and fads. And the belief that you and your children should be safe as you go about your day-to-day business is obviously something that's very foundational, important, not just to us, but to everyone in the country. And that, as well as obviously just not being killed as you walk around, is why this is very important to us. So that's enough from me. And so let's go into our general kind of news updating chat, and ideally someone from Birmingham to start it off.
Hi, David Cox. I'm certainly from Birmingham, but anybody who reads The Guardian or even watches BBC, or was at the Active Travel Cafe when Mac McDonald talked about better streets for Birmingham will know as much about what's happening here as I will. To be honest, I've just been going to meetings since 2002. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's what's so terribly sad, and it's like the spike in London in 2016, I think, which led to a lot of a very effective campaign about protecting London cyclists. Is that the roads have got more dangerous, the driving's got more reckless, and more active travellers, and which is pedestrians and people weekend their kids to school as well as cyclists are being killed and damaged by motorists. I mean, some outright reckless, some just general average speeding and carelessness and not looking. But I mean, better streets for Birmingham. Look at their website. It's extremely neat and tidy. Don't look at the Push Bikes website because it's neither of those things. It's old generation stuff and it's very hard to change. I was on a ride on Sunday, leading a ride with a friend who's currently planning to ride around South America next year. But she said, how can I get involved in campaigning in Birmingham? So I said, well, there's Push Bikes, the traditional CT Cycling UK, British Cycling Affiliated Cycle Campaign, and there's Better Streets for Birmingham. She said, yes, Better Streets for Birmingham's got things I can do now in my community. All Push Bikes is really offering for me to get engaged before Christmas, when she disappears, of course, is Zoom meetings, and I spend my whole lifetime in Zoom meetings for work. So, I mean, the whole culture is different. People are younger, they've got families, they can do a kidical mass at a drop of a hat. It's partly is around a place called King's Heath, which I don't know what the London or Brighton or Nottingham or Edinburgh equivalent of, but it's where a lot of just very lively, intelligent, well-connected people live. You know, they could produce excellent spokespeople. And there's a hive of activity which we've been working on for years. We used to have a pub gathering every month called the Cycle Cafe, right in the heart of King's Heath. And it's just part of building a cycling culture in Birmingham, which probably hadn't been there before. So, yeah, November the 30th, and it's become this Safer Streets thing has become a national day of action, as I understand it. I'm finding it very hard to find precise details, and I wonder if that's because they are very wise about the new government laws and are waiting until they've negotiated with police and such like. The hashtag Safer Streets or whatever it is didn't produce anything when I was on. So anyway, if anybody else wants to add to that, that's what I'm going to say.
Thanks. So we have got Matt from Better Streets for Birmingham here. I've got Ruth with a hand up. Matt, do you want to say something first?
Hi, how you doing, guys? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, very good.
Can you? Right, great. Apologies, I've literally only just managed to hack my way into this meeting. My own technological incompetence is doubtless the main cause of that. So apologies if I'm repeating anything or missed any vital points in your preamble. I'm absolutely delighted that that everyone thinks the lack of information is some very cunning intellectual ruse on our part rather than disorganisation. I'll allow you to continue labouring under that misapprehension for a little while. Safe Streets Now. I was honoured to be invited a few months back to the Active Travel Cafe to give a short presentation about the proposed action that we are now going to be undertaking on the 30th of September. Essentially, what we're aiming for on the 30th of, and it's September, sorry, just to make that clear, not November, 30th of September, is a diffuse set of actions across the country in lots and lots of different locations to send a clear and unequivocal message that we need changes at a national legislative level to make our streets safer. So we're delighted to be working with a number of groups on this. Walk Ride Greater Manchester, the cycling campaign from Leicester, and various national bodies, and lots of others that I haven't mentioned. Essentially, to participate in this day, and we would strongly urge everyone on this call to do something on the 30th of September. It can be a handful of people standing at a road or a significant location with some signage, and what we're hoping to do is at midday to culminate the actions in a minute's silence to honour all the victims of road violence in all its different guises. As I said, on the website, we will have resources available so that people can download leaflets, download posters and signage for the day, and also some generic local press releases. We've got some FOIs going to various police forces about driving bans, which we're hoping will come back, although there has been quite a lot of obstruction with these. So essentially, we can do, and we are doing, a lot of the legwork to help put on an action anywhere in the UK. And all that we actually need from people now is a location where they will turn up at 11 o'clock on Saturday, the 30th of September. That's the really vital thing that we need. And even if it is literally going to be 4 or 5 people in a location, the power of this event will be the fact that it is disseminated. It is widespread. It is happening simultaneously in a large number of locations. So literally, even, you know, what might feel like a very small action is going to be part of a very big action. And, you know, by adding a location to the list, you will be making a really significant contribution to the power of the message. So please do get in touch with us via the website, safestreetsnow.co.uk. There will be resources there. We have got an email address. We are responding to people. We're getting a lot of interest on it now, thanks to the brilliant film from Sarah Chandler, and some good work on Twitter by a lot of people on the National Organising Committee. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and what we really need is people just to say where they're going to be. Give us a location, we will promote it, we will send you materials, we will help with every other aspect of it. But the more locations we can get, the more noise we can get, and the greater our chances of making the changes that we also desperately want to see here.
Great, thank you, Matt. That's really helpful. And if you put contact details into the chat, people will pick them up, and I'm sure get in touch with you. We're planning our one for Oxford. It happens to be the day of the It happens to be the day of the Transport Action Network conference in London. So I'm now thinking I'm going to be there. Most of my friends will still be in Oxford, but I'm going to plan something at the Transport Action Network conference with Roger Geffen and co.
That would be fantastic. So, that would be absolutely fantastic.
I will now go
something on the train in between as well, you know, just to cover all the bases.
Oh, good one. I will now go to the very patient Ruth. If your question is still relevant, Ruth.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was News Roundup, local News Roundup still.
Oh, okay, sorry, I was going to do the Birmingham, anything related to Safer Streets Now first, but then we'll come to the News Roundup.
Sorry.
Generally. But okay, when we come to the general news, your first dibs. And anything more on Better Streets Birmingham, Safer Streets Now? Or has Matt answered every question, covered every angle? Good. So linked to that, the all-party parliamentary group on cycling walking linked their road justice report. Hopefully everyone's seen that. I'll pop a link to that in the chat for those of you that haven't. It basically says that the justice system isn't doing its job and makes 10 recommendations to improve it. They've had a good team working on that. I don't know if anyone here is a specific expert in that and wants to have 30 seconds to talk about it. Nope. In which case I'll put a link into it, and you can read it at your leisure, those of you who haven't already found it. And in which case we'll go over to
Robin.
general local news. Sorry, Claire.
Robin, I will just, I'm not an expert, but I was there. So when they launched it yesterday, so I could just share a few thoughts, and I also wrote something up about it afterwards, which I wasn't intending to do actually, but Chris Boardman was there he sort of, more of a personal capacity, and he described in very moving terms, for those who might not know, he lost his mum in a road crash. Driver subsequently prosecuted. So he spoke very movingly about that. I thought it was interesting in the preamble to the launch that Dr. Tom Cohen, who is the author, said that they essentially looked at kind of two different categories of the 10 recommendations. So they fall in sort of category A, which was things that they thought were perhaps harder and less doable, but should be in the recommendations. And the second category were things that they thought might be more doable. So that's the sort of second 5 things, like a UK Commissioner for Road Danger Reduction, and widening the understanding of the highway code. Standardizing third-party reporting systems was in that category of things that might be sort of easier, not that any of them were seen as easy. And that was an interesting one. And the one that got a bit of chat in the meeting, but also I think we've talked about here before, was about the exceptional hardship clause, and the fact that there's a stat in the report about the fact that almost a quarter of drivers use exceptional hardship. And as Dr. Cohen said, it's clearly not exceptional if a quarter of drivers are using that. So yeah, I thought it was a good event, and it was good that there was a number of organisations there. UK Cycling in particular seemed very strong on it. I've seen we've got Amy here, who's obviously is an expert on this, unlike me, to your previous call to action, Robin. So it might just be good to hear from Amy on this. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, let me see. Yeah, I don't mean to jump in with Ruth, but yeah, as Claire mentioned, they organized their 10 recommendations into 5, which would be more in the future, and then 5 which they thought could be feasible in the present if they got the political will, which seems really unlikely. I would say we were a little disappointed by how focused they were on sentencing, because we think justice really requires offenders to be detected before sentencing can actually make a difference. We don't know of any evidence that tougher, longer jail sentences deters unsafe driving. So I'd like to just do a shout out for, if anyone on this call knows of such evidence, share it with us so we can know better, because everything we've seen from the research published by the Sentencing Council or Sentencing Academy or Criminal Justice Alliance, which we're a member of, shows the opposite. We'll be doing a blog about it, responding in detail, but also identifying ways which we can build on these recommendations, because this is a follow-up from the 2017 report, and let's not wait another 6 years for another report before we take action. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Amy. That's one we'll all agree with, I'm sure. Great. Okay, let us now move on to our local news. I'm sure H is going to add something to this, but I'm going to let I'm going to let him do that as second person in the general news, because Ruth has waited a long time. Ruth, over to you.
Oh, thank you. Just following on from the Amy's comment, one of the things I think really needs to be looked at, given the accidents, crashes, killings that have happened this year, is people driving these modern new cars clearly don't know how to use them, because they are mistaking accelerators and brakes. And a lot of the awfulness that's happened has been that error. So, if you buy one of these cars, there really surely needs to be some kind of training. Anyway, that was that. The exciting news is Cycleway 9 in Chiswick got the go-ahead last Tuesday by Cabinet, full agreement by all the Cabinet members. So unbelievably, a section in the middle was still temporary because of an ETRO. We believe that the local Tories, of which there are 9 in my area, are going to call it in, but hopefully we'll get to Friday and they won't have done, and it will be absolutely. So hats off to Hounslow Council for being utterly, utterly brilliant on this and remaining steadfast, given that there's been on either side of the borough, well, Hammersmith and Fulham were okay, but Richmond's not doing very well. So that was that bit of news, exciting. And the tragic news was that somebody was knocked off their bike on the pathetic painted line that is the cycle route in Ken High Street. No surprises there, because we all knew that would happen. It's a glorified car park, and it really is awful. But positive from Chiswick and Hounslow, so we're very, very lucky here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. I've heard little inklings of graduated driving tests, and certainly the report did have in more a call for more retesting, in fact universal retesting if you get any form of driving disqualification, which I think is a really good thing. But of course we'll see if any of that happens. Okay, H, over to you.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, just a couple of things. First, going back to Amy's point, the offences of causing death by dangerous and careless driving were introduced in about the 1960s to ease up on the pressure on the courts. Killing anybody with any other piece of equipment usually warrants a charge of manslaughter. And before we had CDCD and CDDD, we surely had manslaughter when people killed using a motor vehicle. Could we not return to that? Because manslaughter carries so much more weight than doing that. And I just reacted to Becky as well. I'm having a chat with Mark online about what they call Certificate of Professional Competence, CPC. If you're a transport manager with an O license, you have to have CPC. If you've got a Class C, D or E driving license, you have to have CPC. But nowhere do the people doing road safety audits or road hazard audits, road risk audits, have to prove they've got a CPC. You can get staff doing all sorts of things. And my banging on about Section 39, if you have crashes in an area, do try and get a freedom of information on the Section 39. It's a mandated thing for the Roads Authority to investigate crashes and then to tell them, this is marking your own homework, tell themselves what to do to prevent more crashes. And there is no public requirement for that to be on display. We have to dig it out of them. And from what I see, some of it has got no competence at all. We had, I don't know if I mentioned this, but we had a road rearrangement. The street in front of my flats is now on the A82, the access to the M8. And it queues up with traffic, no end. And as part of it, they introduced a new traffic island. And the gap.
We should. Sorry, we're not going to be able to deal with every traffic island. H. We need to get onto our speaker in a minute.
Okay, yeah. Well, the gap there was barely 3 centimeters wider than the minimum gap to get a bus through at 30 miles an hour. And within 2 weeks, somebody had hit the traffic island. I predicted that. I mean, this is the crazy thing about road design. Let's go.
But your point is well taken. Your point is well taken. Jill, wait. Where are you from, Jill?
I'm in Stevenage, sorry.
Stevenage, yes.
Yeah.
Land of cycle lanes.
So, yeah, cycle lanes, indeed. 45 kilometres of them. Right. So it was when you're hearing about the sort of September the 30th event and just having lots and lots of them. On Sunday coming is a global event, but it loses a bit in the translation, so people don't necessarily understand what it is. On Sunday, all over the globe, there'll be fancy women bike rides. And I think that name makes people not really understand what it's about. The Fancy Women Bike Rides were started in Turkey 10 years ago by a couple of women who've actually had recognition from the UN on this. And it's very much stuff that we would be absolutely alongside. It's owning the space, making it safer. The idea that if women are able to ride wearing whatever they happen to be wearing, dressing up for their destination, then the roads are safe for everyone. And if the women are riding, the children are riding, and the roads become safe for everyone. So basically, it's just a sort of a shout out. There are about 5 Fancy Women bike rides taking place over the country. There's one in London. We're doing our 3rd in Stevenage. And it's something that it is exactly like what was said about the Safer Streets event. You just say you're going to do it, and they don't like it being organised with it sort of by anybody other than women. So myself and Tina Walker in Stevenage, we just do it. We're trying to get a lot more publicity for it this year, but it's just, I wanted to sort of explain that people sort of think thinks it's fancy dress. The idea is we dress up, we wear nice clothes, heels, or whatever makes us feel fabulous. That's the deal. We have a picnic, and it's a ride out. It's a procession. It's a celebration, and of course we can do it on bike paths. So it's good. So I'll put a link to our one in the chat. But it's go and have a look at it. There's a really good article on it. That it is this idea. It's the owning the streets, and it is a campaign event, although it sounds like something totally different. Men are welcome to join. There's a lovely phrase. Men are welcome to join with us, but not in front of us. And we ask that they wear you wear normal clothes as well. You see men say, oh, do I wear a dress? No, you wear your suit, you wear your shirt, you wear what you would wear to work, dressing for the destination.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you, Jill. Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Yes, I'm sorry if it's noisy here. I'm literally on a park bench in the middle of Shrewsbury with the whole of my team in a pub nearby where I've just left them to come and join you. So there's a pint waiting for me. So I'll be quick. It was just I was going to share, unless you want to carry on road safety, Robin, I was just going to do a quick thing on clean air zones and messaging.
We're going to be very quick now because we're a bit over time.
So I'm going to share. Can I share my screen very briefly, Robin?
No.
Okay, well, that was the point.
Could you do it without the screen?
Yeah. No, not really. It's to show you the campaign that's brought in a clean air zone in Newcastle, but we can do it next time, Robin.
Adam, can you do that very quickly? Okay. Yep.
Okay. So I was just going to show you how it's just a bit of good news, really, Robin. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, good. So the clean air zone for Newcastle and Gateshead has come in. It's caused far less kerfuffle than ULEZ, and we've been on it for about 4 years. And I just wanted to share with everybody the fact that I feel you can get the messaging right on some of this, and not sort of step into loads of potholes. So we've been doing radio, TV, and lots of adverts, but I'll just cut to the messaging so that you can get a sense of the mix. We basically, the phase 4 had a really interesting balance between very supportive messaging for drivers, HGV drivers, taxi drivers on how we can help you. There was a general messaging strand around the social justice issue and the need for better air quality. Then a very, very tight focus on childhood asthma. And then the real one that brought it home, I think, for us, is all of our messaging included the increased levels of pollution inside the vehicle as well as outside. And that balance of those 4 strands of messaging seems to have brought the CAS into Newcastle and Tyneside slightly more smoothly than it has elsewhere. So I thought I'd share that as a kind of top tips for messaging that seem to have worked for us.
Okay, thank you. Anything that makes these things smoother is actually very good. If there's a way you can share those, that will be really helpful because
of course,
that's what our county council needs.
Email them, Steve, and we can put them on the website.
Very quickly, Paul and Emily. Paul first.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, just some good news from Newcastle. The North Tyneside Council has been awarded £11 million from Sustrans and ATE to build a 7-kilometre flagship cycleway along the coast. And Sustrans and ATE have been working together to do design scrutiny. Brian Deegan was up with us last week, and it's all going to be looking good. So that's good news. I'll just leave you with that. But also, LTNs are now cul-de-sacs. I'm just saying cul-de-sacs now, and everybody likes that. Take that away.
You're a genius, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Emily.
Yeah, just some mixed news from the far north of Inverness. We thought we'd won a pretty big vote in the local area committee. They're proposing to restrict or remove through traffic from the town centre on Academy Street. Then the leader of the opposition has called it in some obscure process. So there's another vote this week for the full council, and fingers crossed they've got a bigger majority there, so they should win. But bigger win for me personally is that after 2 years of battling, we are having the first play street in the Highland Council on Sunday. Not quite how I'd like it, but we are having a trial, and I'm going to take that as a win for this week.
Great. Let's take every win. Every win is a win. As somebody very wise who is, I believe, on this call once said. Great. Thank you very everybody for your news. It was a great roundup. And now we'll go on to today's speaker, Jim Densham from Cycling UK in Scotland. Jim, are you ready with your introduce yourself and put your slides up?
Yeah, here we go. Hope you can see that. So yeah, it's good to be with you. The last time I was here was more than a year ago. I think I was doing a similar thing, actually, giving an update on Scotland. So happy to do that every so often. And perhaps every year is quite a good time, because this is the time when we've just had, like last week, we just had Scottish Government giving its programme for government. So a good opportunity to look at what the Scottish Government is promising for cycling, and a look back at what it has done over the past year. So that's this was really instigated by me for Cycling UK, doing what we called Report Card 2023, which is looking back at the past year to see how much government has done for cycling, and is it really delivering based on its own promises. So I'll just talk about that for about 10 minutes. I can't seem to get my screen to move on. Oh, sorry, I've gone too far now. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, we published our report card as we did the year before, really to ask, or to list all of government's promises on cycling and sustainable transport, and to say, to sort of rate whether they have been going. So this time, actually, it was quite interesting coming up, because this is the first year when Nicola Sturgeon is no longer First Minister. We had a new First Minister, Hamza Yousaf, but also in the last year we've had quite a few changes in Transport Minister. So that has made a difference in terms of, it feels like some delays in the way things are being given out by government and published. But also, well, we still have the same active travel minister, Patrick Harvey of the Greens. So that is a positive thing to keep that consistency there. I think the other thing to think about in terms of Scotland is we are sort of approaching halfway through the parliament. So a couple of years in, and the first programme for government after the election was full of lots of promises, full of lots of things that the Scottish Government, both as SNP and the Scottish Greens, were going to do. Lots of good positive things, headline things that haven't been done yet because they're for later in the Parliament. And now we're sort of seeing government sort of contracting on those promises, and less things being promised for the future, as we'll see, but also a feeling like there's been quite a few delays, and maybe that is because of the change in ministers, maybe it's because of circumstances, but we really want to see government pushing ahead and pushing on with delivering for cycling, but there has been quite a few delays, as you'll see in a minute. So this isn't particularly to read, but to give you an impression of the mixed progress this year. So we looked at, I think there's 16 things there, 16 promises the government made itself. So quite a few greens, but also some oranges and a few reds as well. So that RAG rating, just to sort of give an indication to people how well Scottish Government is going on delivering these commitments it made either last year or the year before, things that it's still committed to. And I'll talk about some of these. I think I would probably say that when we did this last year, there was more greens than oranges. It made some early wins. This year, perhaps we're getting to some of the harder stuff. So some of that low-hanging fruit's been done, some of the easy wins. But yeah, getting to that point where it's a bit tougher. So active travel funding, I'll come on to that in a minute, a bit more detail, but still a big commitment. to next year deliver £320 million in the budget for active travel. But we did see a record investment, so we are now up to 189 million in this current financial year. So that's still a record on where we've ever been, and you'll see in a minute a graph which shows that. I think the other thing that we've had in the past year is a new cycling framework for active travel, so a real improvement in the sort of strategic focus governments had, because previous ones were about active travel, well, no, really about cycling, but this is really looking at cycling for active travel. So really, how do people get about for short everyday journeys, and making a difference there? Obviously, strategies are only good on paper. It's about the delivery of them that really makes the difference. So we'll be tracking that, but a really positive strategy that came out in the past year. There is also an ongoing transformation project, which is actually delayed, but what it is like government saying, okay, we're going to get we've promised the 320 million, we've promised big amounts of money, but how do we actually deliver that? It's a big step up from where we were. And when I show the graph in a minute, you'll see just what a change that is. So government is aiming to deliver this in the right way, and look at how it delivers that. And some of that is to do with creating the networks of cycling in Scotland, which they've also promised in terms of a national walking, cycling and wheeling network. And how does it do that in a way which, is it money through Sustrans? Is it more money to local authorities? Is the planning for this? How is that all done? So unfortunately, we've put red for network planning and active freeways. We know that there are schemes coming. We know that there are different routes being created, but the overall picture of how that will work is still not very clear in Scotland. And that's a major thing we need to push on in the next year. 20-mile-an-hour zones. So different to what we see in Wales at the moment, where the 20-mile-an-hour is a default system that they brought in, so local authorities have to opt out. This in Scotland, we kind of lost that argument a few years back, so it's really a zonal system. But in a way, it's a similar thing, just the other way around. So government is looking at recommending that all built-up residential streets, built-up streets are 20 mile an hour, but local authorities can opt out of that. And just put in the schemes that it wants to put in, but it is going through a central process. So we do know the minister has said that this is going on, and we know that this process is going on, but we haven't seen any outcomes yet. So I think that's a bit delayed. So we gave that an amber rating. The next one there, you can see the next red is the car kilometre reduction route map. So in Scotland, ministers made a commitment to reduce car kilometres travelled in Scotland by 20% by 2030, which is, fantastic to see government making a commitment to reducing car traffic and making streets quieter, making them more hospitable for cycling, cutting carbon emissions. Very positive. And put out a consultation more than a year and a half ago. That consultation, lots of people put their recommendations into that. We haven't seen a response to that, but I believe that it's coming. That will be coming out. The final version of that will be coming out with the climate change plan in November, because they will essentially say very similar things. Same sorts of measures will be there in those documents. So that will be a major piece of work to say, well, and a big statement from government to say how they will be aiming and what measures they will put in place, and effectively which sticks they will put in place more than they already have in order to make driving less attractive. Low emission zones are coming in and have been pretty well received, although some few sticking points. And then the other orange down there I want to point out is the dashcam safety portal. So this is, many police forces around England and Wales have dashcam safety portal, where it's easy to upload your footage from your dash cam or from your handlebar cam or your helmet cam. In Scotland, we don't have that. And in Cycling UK, we've been leading a campaign to make that happen. It all got a bit sticky at November, December last year when police said that they were reviewing everything, all projects. But recently the minister has recommitted to that, and it was in the programme for government. So again, positive, and we will keep pushing on that. So as I said, programme for government came out last week, and what was in it? So again, I'll just go back to this budget. That's the graph of progress in terms of budget increases since 2017-18. And we're obviously at that 189 figure, 23-24 right now. And government committed right at the beginning of the parliament with the deal with the Greens that they would spend 10% of the transport budget on active travel by 24-25. So we expect that in the next budget, which will be probably early December. This is a real key thing. Lots of us campaigned for this for many years, campaigned for it heavily in the 2021 Holyrood elections. It was something that all the parties signed up to in their manifestos, pretty much. The SNP sort of like hedged a bit on how they would like word it. But actually then with the Greens coming in, they went for the full 10%, the transport budget. So that's 10% or at least 320 million. So that is a commitment which government has not backed away from in any way. It's there fully in the programme for government. So we are expecting that, and we need to now encourage Transport Minister, the Finance Secretary and the First Minister to be bold with that and to really go full on that and spend that money well. So that is around £58 per head. So Scotland's making great strides in that respect. But it's not all about money. It's also about political will and really making the difference. So we need to keep encouraging our government to make these big strides. And to, I said some of the things have been delayed. Some of the policies that we really need right now have been delayed as government works out how it's going to spend the money and do it in the right way, how it's going to achieve traffic reduction. So some of these things, these things are listed here are the policies and the commitments made in the programme for government and actually match things that we said that we wanted from our report card analysis. So we really must see a transformation project which sets out a direction for how the money is going to be spent on creating the blueprint for a national active travel network, which includes active freeways, which are supposed to be sort of like, let's say, the motorways of cycling, into and out, in and out of cities and between big towns. 20-mile-an-hour zones. That policy is due to be completed by 2025. So we want to see as many, urban sort of residential built-up streets designated 20-mile-an-hour zones as possible. So we'll be learning from the situation in Wales. The 20% car kilometre reduction, they're still saying that will come out this year, and we'll then see what measures are going to be put in place. And the PFG committed to the dashcam safety portal, so we're very happy about that. So that's basically a quick run through. I didn't want to go into loads of detail because there's lots of policies there. Just wanted to highlight some of the main things that we're pushing for. I'll put a link in the chat to our report card document so you can see that at your leisure. But I will just wanted to keep it open for any questions or any observations on the way Scotland's going, or observations if you're not in Scotland, observations from England on how you think Scotland is doing. And I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, Jim, thank you very much for that. Just while people think of questions to ask, I'll make a couple of observations on that. My first one is that the national programme for government for Scotland has a cyclist front and centre on the cover, which I think is a great statement of intent. The second one is that you're talking about a budget for active travel going from 189 million to 320 million in a country with a population of 4 million people.
4.5, something like
4.5 million people. So I've just been looking up Roger Geffen's blog, or maybe there's a Cycling UK blog. It looks like Roger Geffen. Yes, it is Roger's. The England active travel budget has just gone down from 280 million to an average of 125 million for the next 2 years. So, I mean, it's and that's for 40 million people, 45 million people, maybe 10 times as many. It would be funny if it wasn't funny. Yeah, and even if we're not in Scotland, I think the checklist that you've got there makes a good checklist for any country, any council, and regardless of what scores Scotland is getting, that list of things is an excellent list of things to be checking people against. Oh, there's
5.5 million people.
Another million people have just moved.
Yeah, just arrived. Yeah, we're a welcoming place in Scotland, but not that welcoming. Yeah, I think it is really good progress. I think one of the things is that it's interesting that cycling's on the front cover of the program for them. Not just this year, for the past 3 years, there's been a bike or people riding a bike on the front cover, which I noted on Twitter, but I also noted in our official response for Cycling UK that you can't judge a book by its cover. So even though it's got a bike on the front, sadly, there is less in there this year, and there's nothing new. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, because government's got to do the big things well, and that's what we're really encouraging it to do. So not just come up with new things for the sake of it, but really to get to the nub of these really tricky issues. Now they're in the middle of the parliament to get these things done. And like you say, there's lots of commitments there. Lots of them should be done. And other governments and local government could look at that list and say, yeah, are we doing enough on cycle safety? Are we doing enough on all of these different things and making a difference?
Okay, Adam, what is your question?
Yeah, I'm curious. It's more about this kind of budget allocation of 10% of your sort of transport budget, which I think money talks in the world this way as well. Is it? Have they done a change to the road building program? Have they kind of halted it similarly to the way Wales has, and is this where they're finding the money from, or is it just one of those things?
I've never done an analysis of what has changed. I mean, they are putting more money into public transport as well, although, that's a real area that needs to be done. Sadly, the programme for government still committed government to A9 dualling, and other major roadworks. There is certainly less major road building than there was promised sort of 10 years ago, but there is still these major, which is very much a vote winner in Scotland, and they've committed to it for many years. But the thing with these big projects like the A9 dualling, it's not being done very quickly. So they're not saying no to it, but they're making it go very, very slowly. So I'm not saying that that's official policy of the government to make it go slowly so that they can spend more money on sustainable travel, but still keep their voters. But you could say that was a way of looking at it.
And cost of living comes in and it makes it more and more expensive the longer it's delayed. Yeah.
Okay. Emily, question from Scotland to Scotland. You're on mute at the moment.
Hi, Dan. I still think it's one of those things really interesting. So being on the other side of this. So I run a social enterprise that does a load of cycling projects, and I'm also Inverness's lead campaigner for cycling things. There's still this really fascinating tension. There's a lot of money, and for capital schemes, but I find it really interesting that my feeling is that the budget for behaviour change programmes is much tighter now than it has been for the last couple of years. which I think is a real missed opportunity, because the schemes that are coming in, they're taking forever. Like, up here, we've got a massive increase in the active travel team in the Highland Council, which is great. But we've still not built anything. And everybody's just doing strategies. So it's quite frustrating and really slow, and really, really divisive on like a local politics level. It's the arguments about Academy Street have turned pretty personal. And so I still don't quite know how you get around that one, but I feel like we ought to be able to build things quicker than we're currently managing to do it. There we go. So
yeah. So there's a real, as we put in the report card, even though we had record funding again this year, there's been a real problem, and there's always a problem in terms of government getting the money out to projects, and we're, as Cycling UK, part of that, those receivers of money to get projects done and things on the ground and help people get on bikes, etc. But there have been cuts, so we've lost the funding to our Scotland Cycle Repair Scheme, which was really popular and did really well.
We used to deliver that. I loved it.
Yeah, and it just seems like bonkers that they've got rid of something that was doing really well. But that's and Bikeability has had money cut, and so you kind of wonder about this. So government officially spends 7% of its active travel budget on projects that, that it's revenue funding or resource funding to run these projects. But we need to, at some point, ask the government or do an FOI to find out whether they are actually spending that amount of money, because it feels like there's been quite big cuts. And I don't quite understand. I can understand why. Maybe it's because I'm not an economist. I can understand why, with if you build a stretch of road or cycle lane, then local authorities get worried about who's going to maintain it afterwards, and they don't have the funding to do that. And I know that's held up some projects. But when it's projects to help people get on bikes and Bikeability, which is funded every year, it doesn't really make sense to hold that money back and say it's revenue funding. But that's something we need to dig to the bottom of. It's and the other thing to sort of say, I think, Emily, you've alluded to it, is that it's all right to have these massive amount of money, but local authorities need to be able to spend it and spend it well. So it's not just about, it's about getting the right skills, getting more people, like you say, to the Highland Council active travel team to be able to spend it, to do it well, to account for it and to be open about it. So there's lots of, and also to the political will at local level. We've got political will at the high level of government, but is it there in all the 32 local authorities? It's not, and we need to help work on that. It's quite tricky.
Yeah, and I have to say, we particularly up here are feeling the cuts to the Bikeability programme this year. So Highland Council are moving over to it almost entirely being delivered by volunteers again. Having spent 8 or 9 years campaigning really hard to get professional delivered Bikeability in schools, that feels pretty personal. I've had to sack people because of that.
Yeah.
But there we go. And that's a manifesto commitment. So I find that one particularly difficult to stomach.
We're now into, it looks like we've got active travel bothy going on, because we go from Emily in Inverness to H in Glasgow, and then Andrew in Stirling. H, off you go. Whoop.
I've got it. It's all right. It's working off the Android. Pick up with Emily. I gather that Hightrans have repurposed some of the cargo bikes at the hospital, and you're also carrying on with the bike hire scheme since Bivagan pulled out, and Hightrans are carrying it forward.
Yes.
One of the repurposed cargo bikes, because NHS Highlands got some cargo bikes and wasn't making enough use of them, has actually been equipped with scanning equipment to do road surface surveys. Am I right on that one?
Okay. Yeah, I think you're mixing up two schemes here. Highland Hightrans already owned some cargo bikes that they had made available for businesses in the region to loan if they wanted to. They've taken those back under their control, and they're now available in the Rose Street car park on short-term hire. So I think there's like 2 front loaders, a turn, and a trike. I haven't actually been down to see them. That's only been in the last couple of weeks. And then Sustrans had their funding for the cargo bike project withdrawn this year, and they've gifted us as Velocity the legacy cargo bikes to manage. So there are still 3 cargo bikes in the NHS. 1 is over in Broadford. 2 are under factory recall, and so we're just trying to figure out exactly what that recall is and get that sorted out and get them used again. And then the other 3 are with the Highland Council.
We're getting a little bit specific here. I feel
there's not road scanning.
The
highest user is the roads team doing roads inspections. They love it. Like really great.
That is good to hear. If you so that's one, if you can get onto social media and spread around, I'm sure we'd all be loving to tell our road maintenance teams that Inverness maintenance team is using cargo bikes.
Well, back around 1990, the roads department in one of the US states actually had a GPS beacon on the front forks of a bike. And every time they found a pothole, they clicked to get the location on the GPS. And then when they went back to the office, they could do a plot based on all the records that they'd picked up.
Right. So Richard Fairhurst, one of the Open Street Map experts, has got his I think the accelerometer in his iPhone to pick up road vibrations. Maybe that's a future topic. Right, but let me move now to Andrew in Stirling.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, H.
Hi, I had an interesting chat with a transport planner in Stirling who said it's great having all the extra money available from Scottish Government, and they've worked on the strategies, they know what they want to do. The problem now is finding highways engineers with the skills to build active travel stuff who understand it. They seem to hire them, and then they get pinched by other local authorities who are doing stuff. We lose them to Edinburgh and Glasgow. And he was saying that the most useful thing the Scottish Government could be doing at the moment would be to be encouraging the education establishments to be churning out more highways officers who understand active travel. And I'm wondering if anybody's working on that.
This is, I know, a national problem, the shortage of skilled people in active travel design. Is there anyone in the business who wants to comment on that?
I could, if you would like me to, John Parkin.
Yeah.
So I have been at the West of England for the last 10 years and teaching civil engineers and teaching quite a lot in relation to cycle infrastructure and cycle design. But it is, as your previous commentator just said, a national problem. I do know that there is quite a lot of activity in active travel in England, in Wales as well, Scotland, that, you know, and there's just general concern about this. It's something about even if I can train them at a university to understand the issues and they're ready and willing to accept, it is still then what happens as custom and practice when they get into the workplace. I would argue partly, but yeah, it may well be. I might be presaging something here. It may well be something that is a future topic at Active Travel Cafe. I don't know.
The skills question, yeah. I mean, that'd be a really interesting one to have, because this is a great interface of the kind of advocates and the professionals and indeed the academics, which I think is where you fit in, John. Good. Ruth, this will, I think, should be possibly the last question of the day, but we'll see how we go.
Hi, no, thank you so much.
No, Bob's coming. I'll definitely give time to Bob.
I'll seriously be quick. Just picking up what's just been said is this: we still have a disconnect between commuting cycling and utility cycling. So Richmond, quick as a flash, there've been some crashes, motorbike crashes, so they shoved up a barrier that you cannot get an accessibility bike through. We've challenged it. They say they've got to do it because the police have asked them to, blah, 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 blah. And the problem is that there is not enough recognition still about, mothers, women cycling with children, people with bigger bikes, different kinds of bikes. And that is the biggest thing that we really have to change the whole media concept on, which I know you all know, but traffic engineers don't seem to understand this either. They don't understand cycling with a child. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll add to that the inclusive aspect, to cycling with a disability needing 3 wheels or some other combination. Very good point, Ruth. Bob, great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see everybody. Sorry I'm late. Yeah, I nominate John Parkin if he wants to give us a talk about how to train up engineers properly. I don't know if you still with us, John? Jim, John.
He's certainly on. He's certainly online.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll be in touch.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks very much, Jim, for a really interesting talk about what's happening in Scotland, which, as ever, has triggered up a whole bunch of discussions, and I think has interesting implications for people not just in Scotland but beyond there. That was really helpful and excellent, and so thank you for that. Next week we will have Jonathan Bray, who is former director of the Urban Transport Group. So that's we'll probably be talking about planning and development, and where that comes into active travel infrastructure. He's now independent. He'll be talking about challenges for the sector and how to make change happen. So that's going to be an interesting session. Same time, same place, same Zoom link. So look forward to seeing you all there. In the meantime, have a good week and enjoy your whatever form of active travel takes you to the places you need to get to. Thank you very much, and end of recording.